Hey everyone, and welcome to another video, and today we're checking out a product from Mobile Pixels, and that is their new Duex Plus. So this is a secondary laptop monitor that you can connect to either a Windows or a Mac laptop, and it just enables you to have a little bit more real estate when you're using the laptop for productivity or whatever you want to actually have that secondary monitor there for. Now, I have had this sent out to me for review, and I've had a little play about with it, both installation wise as well as obviously testing it with various different tasks. So whilst I wouldn't really recommend this for video editing, for everything else it's perfectly fine. It does have a 1080p display and it's 13.3 inches diagonally. In terms of the functionality of the monitor itself, you do have some customization with some buttons on the back that enable you to change the contrast, brightness, all the rest of it, and you can adjust the settings there, but then you can also obviously adjust them in the actual system settings as well. Once applied using magnets, you can actually rotate the monitor either way. I will come back onto this a little later on, and it does have two USB connections. One of those is obviously used in order to power the actual monitor via whatever device it is that you're using. So in my case, it is the MacBook Pro. Here you can see a comparison between a few of the other versions available. So coming on to the actual product itself, I did get sent the normal Duex Plus. So this doesn't include the kickstand. So this basically requires you to actually stick it on using magnets. It does come with a template as well as some pamphlets inside the actual main box that basically give you details in terms of how to actually install this. Now, I didn't have the best of luck with this because initially I tried to actually go as wide as possible with the magnets in order to try and get as stable as possible a binding. But the problem is obviously the MacBook Pro curves quite a bit at the edges, so I did have to remove them and reapply them more centrally. Now, no matter what I did, I wasn't able to actually get this to stick in such a way where it works with the MacBook's hinge when it's actually further down. So when you've got it at a wider angle, if you have the laptop on a desk and you've got it quite upright, then the angle is perfectly fine. But what I did find was as you tilt this back, then it would start to put pressure on the secondary monitor and it flop backwards a little, depending on what angle you actually set it at. As you can see, it does come with all the instructions in terms of how to line it up, and you do have two separate ones depending on whether it's a brand new laptop or whether it's one that's used. It does come with the cable included, and the cable end does have both USB-C as well as USB-A type connections. So here you can see it connected up, and just got it on the home screen so you can see the sort of real estate that you can get from it. This is with the monitor set to 1080p, so obviously as you can see the resolution on that side is quite small. You can increase this if you like and have everything zoomed in a little bit more, but I chose to actually get the maximum amount of real estate and have it set up like that. Here you can see what the magnets actually look like on my MacBook. So as you can see, I've had to move them in considerably, and whilst they are on very, very strongly, you can actually remove them, and I have done so since. Here you can see the actual secondary monitor installed, so that's what it looks like from the back. You do have the buttons on the left hand side there that you can actually adjust some of the settings with. In terms of brightness and in terms of reflectivity, you can see it does an okay job with direct light straight onto it. It does diffuse the light quite well in comparison to the MacBook screen, which is just a glass screen. It doesn't have any real type of diffusion on there. You will get more sheen from it as a result, but obviously that is the sort of payoff for it. Here you can see the actual settings. It is a 60 Hz monitor, so refresh rate is pretty decent for most things, and here you can see the sort of angle issues that I was running into. So the further back you go, the more weird sort of angles it actually ends up doing. I believe the bottom of the monitor did actually end up getting damaged from swinging back. It still works perfectly fine. It's just the trim at the bottom actually came away slightly when I was actually filming some of this B-roll. The cable, unfortunately for me, it was dangling quite a bit on that side. When I initially stuck the magnets on the second time, I wanted it set up on the left hand side, so then the cable is a little neater, but unfortunately it kind of didn't work that way and it hid part of the screen, as you'll see a little later on. This is the main use I had it for, so I can see all my media files whilst editing videos. That is the main use I actually find for secondary monitors. Here's, you can see the back of the actual inside. So this is when the monitor is actually opened up. You can see a little bit of branding there, and these are the actual buttons on the back. Up and down cycle through, and the center one is basically your selection. You can see the size of the actual USB-C cable there. It can plug into either one. I tried it with both ports and it works perfectly fine. So you do have one spare USB-C pass-through essentially. It does drain the battery quite a lot, so you probably want to actually have this hardwired if you are going to be doing anything extensive, as I do with video editing. Overall, it's a decent product. I think for me, with my use case, it didn't really work that well. If this was with a flatter design, then I think it would work better. But in terms of the functionality, you can't really argue with having that much extra real estate compared to some of the ones that I've tested where it's just a very small one. Here you can see the actual secondary connection, if you like, where you can just leave that on and you can connect it to via USB-C or USB-A connection. And here is the actual secondary USB-C connection on the side of the monitor that you've got a pass-through for. Now here is where I actually mentioned the fact that when I connect it to the left hand side, the cable is neater, but unfortunately it cuts off a little of the actual screen. Now this is probably down to the way that I've actually stuck it on. I initially did actually try and line this up to have it more to the left, but it actually worked better to the right. So if you did centralize those magnets a bit better, I think it would work fine either way. For me personally, I think on the left would actually be better because the cable's a little neater. It's not having to wrap around the laptop, but then you do end up with quite a bit of excess. Here you can see the actual settings that you get. So you do get backlight, contrast, saturation, and then you get a few other sensors. The G sensor is basically where it automatically rotates depending on which way around you have it. I care obviously because of video editing, I tend to leave that off most of the time, and the temperature just changes the actual white balance on it. So if you did want to adjust that, you could do, but I actually stuck with the built-in system settings. Overall, it's a pretty decent product. I would say anybody out there looking for a secondary monitor, just to give them some more space when they're actually working, this is a good option. If you do have any questions, then just post them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Links will of course be in the description below.